Hello, I'm Nova SC, and I'm in a game of not StarCraft. This is my mod, Vast. I'm showing you the very last race that I've been working on. Midway through working on this race, I've had an excessive amount of work to be doing for university, so I haven't made a lot of progress on this in three or 4 weeks that I've been doing this, so I haven't spent a huge amount of time on it due to that. But I'll show you around. I'll show you around this last race. So, this race starts with a central structure called the Nebula. I gave it the model of a lair because that's the most impressive looking model I could find. So I just chose that one. You're also given a hand. So my original idea for this race is that you don't have any worker units, you just pick where you want to build things. And if you have vision, you build it. So you obviously can't do anything until you're at tier 1. And then you send your first tier 1 unit out, and that gives you vision so you can build it anywhere on the map that that unit can see, or any other unit for that matter. But to get around these problems and implement my game in StarCraft, I've had to make some exceptions. So I'm using a hand, and this is an invisible, indestructible, unique unit that builds all your structures, and it's extremely fast. As you can see, I originally gave it 100 move speed, but that made it glitch the game a little bit, because as you can see here, let me just try and, there we go. As you can see here, it sometimes can't make jumps. I've given it cliff jump, but as it moves so fast, it sometimes makes mistakes, so the faster it moves, the more glitchy it was moving. So I compromised at 30 move speed, which is still really fast, but doesn't glitch at the games quite as much. Okay, next to show you, we start off with 100 mana and 100, that's supposed to be red mana, but I haven't changed these texts yet because I haven't played around with that yet, because I want this little tip here, this little text, to be different for all the races, and I haven't figured out how to do that quite yet. Hopefully I'll be able to, there'll be a way. But we start off with 100 mana, 100 red mana, and that will allow us to build any two of these three starting structures. We have the green constellation, which has the model of a hatchery, and that gives us more mana, more minerals. Or we can build a red constellation, which goes here, and it's an automated extractor, which doesn't take any workers, and that gives you your red mana or gas. So I'll open both of these. You can also build a rift, which is the structure which builds units. But that's not so useful straight away. You can do that and get some tier 1s very early, but then you don't have quite enough money to support it. That's a bit cheesy. But it might end up the way I balanced it, it's not so bad. I'll see. Obviously I haven't had anyone to test this with yet because the race hasn't finished. So the Nebula can build feeders, which have the model of a drone. Might change that to like maybe a broodling or something like that to make it a bit more different. Feeders have 50 life, and they can't attack. They just sit next to the Nebula or any of these green constellations that you add on, and they generate you some mana. Every unit in Vast costs 1 supply. So though these are free and only take 15 seconds, you don't want to make more than you need because that's taking away vital supply. And these green constellations are your form of supply, and they only give you 3 supply per constellation, and they take 60 seconds to build, so supply is sort of precious. Plus there's a supply cap of 100. So I better show you the rift. So that has the model of a Nidus network. I picked Nidus network because my idea of a rift was like a crack in time sort of thing, and this is cracking through the earth, so it's sort of like what I'm looking for. And there's also another ability which I have to show you quite soon. From your Nebula, you can also, I need to change that to upgrades. You can also upgrade. I've only got 6 so far. I'm gonna have to add in more. So we have you have these ones here are for individual units, and you've got these for your Nebula and structures. So, which is one intradimensional transport. and that takes 150 seconds. And once that's done, your rifts can transport any units, even air units. So air units can go into the rift and come out on from any other rift, like an ISIS network. Obviously there's no limit to the number of units that can go in there, so this is a very useful strategy. And I'm also going to make it so that when you place down the rift, your opponent doesn't get a notification. Like when an ISIS network goes down, you hear the screaming sound, and you hear like the I think you get a ping on your minimap or something. I can't remember, but yeah, that's that. I'm gonna try and make it so that you can't see that it's going down. You don't get notified, because otherwise you'd be able to see inside. You see whenever your opponent builds something inside their base, or you'll hear whenever they build a new structure in their base. Which sort of gives them a lot of scouting information. Seems a bit unfair to me. So I have 2 more feeders, so I'll get a couple more of these, and I'll put the feeders on there. So here's the first tier 1 unit. I'm not going to go into every unit, but I'll just show you the basic stuff, the stuff which is unlikely to change too drastically. So you start off with a berserker, which has the model of an aberration. This is sort of what I was hoping for in model wise. So this looks a lot like I had imagined it. It took a while for me to realise that I could use this model. I think I was planning to use just a massive, like a chunky zergling, make a zergling and just like make his model really huge. But anyway, berserkers they don't have much life, they don't deal much damage. They're cheap. They're very cheap at only 75 minerals, and they start with charge, basically. They're like zealots, but you don't have to research charge for them. But unfortunately, they don't gain the speed boost from charge, so you can't upgrade them to have a move speed of 3, like charge of StarCraft 2 does. But berserk charge is very good. It's very good. It's also a lot fairer. It's also very fair having charge early on, because the way the aberrations attack, I have to show you that. They move there, and then there's a pause, and then they attack. Unlike zealots, which attack like immediately as they reach the target. So it's possible for people to defeat units. If there's a unit here and you charged into it, it's possible for the unit to move backwards and miss the attack. So it's just like a good speed boost, really. It's not as good as it's not nearly as good as charge in StarCraft 2, which would make sense because you start with it. And the next tier 1 unit you can have is actually an air unit, which is the model of a Musilisk, which sounds absolutely broken. It is really good, but it's not as broken as you might think. You require one of these to build it, a red constellation. That's the only requirement. You can also make a Hydralisk model thingy called a Punisher, which is 3rd. That requires just both of these. And similarly, you can make a Voidmaw, which has the model of a Guardian, but I've stretched it out. It's a massive unit, which requires a lot of mana and gas, and that requires only these 2 structures to build. So you basically have 4 tier 1 units with this race, which I thought was really fun. Obviously, this one, though it is really big, it gets really bad very quickly in the game. So in the mid game, this is almost useless. In the late game, you will never see it. Though there is an upgrade for it. This one, Discipline, which improves its range to make it slightly more useful later in the game. So this is the Leech. It has the model of a Musilisk. It doesn't have much life. Actually, it has the same amount of life as a Musilisk, which is just a coincidence, to be honest. Obviously, Berserkers have nowhere near the same life as Berserkers' aberrations. That's just the way it's scaled up, 120. And you have their attack. Its attack is Leech Beam, damage 5 versus heavy, very quick attack speed, and you'll see what it does. Hopefully I can just go. And it has the attack of a Sentry, which looks really cool because it's coming out of its tail, whatever that is, little spiky bit. And as the Leech attacks, I have to hurt it. Nebula has an attack. I'll explain that later. So yeah, the main base can attack. I'll stop. Right, so this is the leech, and I'll attack a heavy structure so it does even more damage versus heavy. As you can see, it's restoring its own energy using its leech beam. They also move very slowly compared to Mucilisks. They only move 2.4, only have a move speed of 2.4 compared to, I think it's like 3 for Mucilisks, so they're quite slow, and they're quite weak obviously, so they're not as good for surgical strikes as Mucilisks, but they are very good at exploiting weaknesses in anti-air, and they are very good against other air units, which are, because they do additional damage versus heavy, and many the really dangerous air units are usually heavy, and yeah, they're quite small. So your opponent, unless your opponent has a lot of splash damage, they're going to be only going to be focusing on one unit at a time, and if you have many of them, it works out really nicely. You can overwhelm big units with these leeches. You also have time rupture. One second. You also have time rupture, which is like a blink, but it blinks to anywhere on the map, so you can just press B and go over to the other side of the map, which is really silly, but it's a very late game thing. It requires a long research time, and I'm going to give it a requirement for you to have both tier 3 structures before you can research it. And it has a cooldown of 100, so you can't blink in and then blink out. You blink, and then you have to deal with whatever you find. And you have to have a vision of where you're blinking to, of course. Time Rupture. I like that name, it's pretty cool. So I've researched I'll just research it now. I've researched the what's it called, intradimensional transport, and that unlocks this option here, transport options, which allows you to load Mucilisks here, and this is gonna load anything into the rift. In addition to training from the rift, you can train and have units in the rift, which is really cool. And then once this is finished, I can demonstrate how a Nidus network works, which I'm sure you're familiar with. I'll just show you a couple more things. I'm not going to show you a huge number of things here. I don't want to waste all your time. I'll show you just the Punisher. I'll show you the rest of the tier 1 units and leave it at that. I'll talk through the rest of the units without showing them. You press W and then D, and here they come out. There we go. So you have Omniscients, which are tiny overseers, as you can see from the model over there. Quite cheap, especially on gas. And I think I made them quite fast just to start with, without any upgrades. And the upgrade for them doesn't make them quite as fast as the upgrade makes them in StarCraft 2. I think that's the way it is, or I might be mistaken. Might be mistaken on how fast they are in StarCraft 2. This is an Uber, which is a tiny Ultralisk model, the Primal Ultralisk, and this is just basically a much better Berserker which can't charge. And it costs and it costs gas. So most situations an Uber would be better, but if you just want to waste minerals or mana, then you want to be making the Berserkers in the late game. But these are just a much better version. And they hit really hard. They do their swipes and deal massive damage to single targets, and they're very good beefy units with a lot of HP. You have Serpents, which have the Dark Templar model. Makes no sense within the rest of these Zerg units, but that's the best I could find. I might change it if I think of something better. But the Serpent hasn't got quite the same role as a DT. It is cloaked, but it has a ranged attack of range 2 in addition to its melee attack. And it has a lot more HP relative to the... I think it has more HP relative to the Dark Templar. It's better in straight up engagements. It's supposed to be that unit which exploits lack of detection. Not so good. It is alright, still alright at harassing, but it is quite good. Just on straight up attacks. I might have to add an upgrade which gives it more life, because it is really cool to watch, because it has the Mothership Core attack, which shoots a ball of energy out of its blade. I thought that was quite cool. I need to change all this text. That's going to take a while. Shit. I have Cyclone, which is the model of a Scourge. It's a tiny air superiority unit. That's the Voidmaw. The Cyclone is really fast, and it's really good at harassing. It's really good at attacking in a first round engagement and then retreating when it gets too weak. It's a very strategic unit. And you've got Chaos, which is similar to a Corruptor, but instead of doing additional damage to big units and massive units, it does additional damage to heavy, I believe. And it's a beefy unit, which with a short range, which you have in the front of your army, which just tanks lots of damage and deals damage to heavy units. You have Monstrosity, which is a massive tier 3 unit. You can only have one. You can only have one of these units, and they have a ridiculously slow movement speed. And the idea is that you have them transport between rifts to help to support your units as they emerge from the rift. So the first thing you emerge from a rift is the Monstrosity, which has a massive DPS, and it protects your units as they emerge and supports them as they retreat. Well, that's quite a cool mechanic. You have a Malice, which has the model of a Leviathan, obviously scaled down a lot because Leviathan is a stupidly big unit, and this unit is just the end. This is just the massive end game unit. Very expensive. I might have to make it even more expensive because it is very good, and it attacks lots of units at the same time. It shoots at quite a decent range, very big, lots of HP, just generally really good. And I'll just show you these last two units before I leave. So every unit comes from the rift, by the way. Like every unit comes from lava for Zerg. Punisher is an anti-air unit. Just as you can see here, it deals additional damage specifically versus air. Doesn't do a huge amount of damage normally, and I've done that quite deliberately. I want these Punishers to be very good against the tier 1 leeches, and I want them to be very good against these tier 1 void maws. That way these units, which are air units, which would otherwise be extremely overpowered against this race specifically, because your only other tier 1 unit is ground, which can only attack ground units. These units, the void maw and the leech, aren't nearly as effective, considering you can just make these very cost-effective Punishers, and you can see how much damage they do. Very, very good. Actually, that's a very bad comparison. I'll use it against a leech. This is a leech against a Punisher. A Punisher is, I believe, cheaper than a leech. Yeah, it's cheaper than a leech. Actually, it's the same cost as a. I think that's the same cost as a Hydralisk, which is weird because I picked these numbers before I played StarCraft 2. That's really, really weird. I might have not actually changed it and forgotten to change that to the real stats, which seems a lot more likely. But anyway, yeah, as you saw, the Punisher beat the Leech without really breaking a sweat there. Not even very close. And this is a Void Maw. Actually, it's not bad against the Punishers because it deals additional damage versus ground units. 72 damage, which is ridiculous, but it has a very short range and a very slow. Might even need to make that even slower. Very slow attack speed. And I'll show you the attack. It actually one-shots feeders like that. Oh dear, that's a lot of damage. 3 shots. The Punisher. And that may seem stupid, considering I've made the Punisher specifically to deal with these Void Maws, but Void Maws are a hell of a lot more expensive. One Void Maw is worth 3 Punishers, and I think, yeah, that's taken it down to half health, so only 2 Punishers will be able to finish off this Void Maw. It would be stupid if the Punishers just were invincible. So, yeah, there we go. So I've shown you just some of the basic stuff. What else did I upgrade? Oh yes! I'm disappointed I killed my leech. I'll just show you the leech's ability, and then I'll call it a day. I don't want this video to go on too long. Lots of stuff I haven't implemented yet. Lots more upgrades I need to put in. Lots of text I need to add. Might need to add a couple more units. Oh yes, there's another unit which I haven't talked about. Ubers can merge, like Archon merge, similar to that, except it's instant and doesn't cost anything. Yeah, the Ubers just merge into a unit called Adjudicator, which has the model of a hybrid, and Adjudicators just aren't amazing for their cost, which is understandable because they come out of nowhere for free from units which may be almost dead. They aren't amazing for their cost, but they attack up both ground and air, and they deal quite a lot of splash damage, similar to an Archon. But I'm also going to give the Adjudicator some extra abilities. So here's leeches. They're moving quite slow, but then suddenly they're over here. Oh my god! But then they can't get back because it's a 100-second cooldown time, and then if there's a unit it doesn't like, then oh no! The leeches are actually really good against Void Maws, as you can see. They're pretty good against void maws. And they regenerate. I'm just having a great time here. Attack! No, attack it! Ah, this is gonna be so close! Oh. Just void maw. I do believe this looks a bit stupid because I've stretched it out. But I think it only looks stupid because I know what it's used to look like. If you just saw this from scratch, I don't think it looks too bad. And it still looks like a Guardian up front, like this. Ah, get it. Still looks a bit like a Guardian when you look at it straight on. Anyway, I'm going on about nothing. I hope you enjoyed this little look at this race. Obviously got loads more to add, as I've said. Putting a lot of effort into all these little sub-menus and things to make it a lot nicer to feel the game. Putting lots of tooltips in, these little passive icons to give you a description of what things do. Yeah, please do play this. You can play it right now. This race isn't in there because it's obviously not finished, but you can play it with my other two races, Psyche and Elemental. Please do play and complain about balance because that will amuse me. Goodbye, I'll fill you in on what I've added next video.